Well, morning. I'm going to tell you a story this morning, and then we're going to talk about it. Grab your coffee. I was maybe 20 years old. It was a summer near as hot as this one, deep in the hayin', that stretch where you're racing the weather and everybody's short on sleep and shorter on temper. And I was running my daddy's tractor, the big one, the one that mattered, and I was in a hurry. I heard her start to labor. I did. I felt her get hot under me, and I had it in my head we had to get that field down before the rain, so I pushed her on through it, wound her up, and kept going. And about the far fence line she let out a sound I have never forgot, and a puff of smoke, and she died right there in the row. And I had cooked the engine, dead. In the middle of hayin', in a year we did not have the money for it. That one was mine. Nobody wound that motor but me. Now my daddy, you have to understand what kind of a man my daddy was. He come up in the Depression, a boy, then the tail end of the war. He built this place, this ground I'm sitting on right now, these 140 acres. He built with his 2 hands and a bad back and not much else. And he was hard. Not mean, but hard. The way that generation was hard. A man of very few words, and near none of 'em soft. So I walked back to that house to tell him what I'd done, and I want you to know I was sick to my stomach. I'd have rather took a whipping. I was 20 years old, and I stood in the kitchen and told my father I'd killed the tractor 'cause I was in a hurry, and I braced for it. And he looked at me a long time, and all he said was, "Well, we'll see what we can do in the morning." And he went to bed. I woke up the next morning before it was even light, 'cause I heard something out in the shop. And it was him. He was already out there. He'd already had the hood up an hour. And we tore that engine down together, the 2 of us, all day, in heat that'd melt the fillings out of your teeth in that little tin shop, passing wrenches back and forth. And here's the thing I need you to hear. All day long, all day, he never said one word about it. Not one. Not what were you thinking? Not how much is this going to cost us? Not your granddad would have tanned you. Nothing. He just worked. Beside me. Handed me the next tool before I knew to ask for it. And along about dark, she turned over. That old engine caught and ran. And my daddy stood up, and he wiped his hands on a rag real slow, and he looked at her running, and he said the only thing he said to me the whole day. He said, "There, don't wind her so hard next time." And he walked into his supper. That's it. That's the whole speech. Now I'm going to tell you something it took me 40 years to understand. My daddy never told me he loved me. Not once. Not when I was a boy, not on my wedding day, not when I put his first grandbaby in his arms, not on the last day of his life. The words "I love you" never one time crossed that man's mouth in my direction. And for a long, long while, I held that against him. I did. I thought there was something in me he just couldn't quite get to. But I was wrong. 'Cause I was waiting to hear it, and the whole time he was out there saying it. That day in the shop, a man dead tired, who could not afford that engine, who had every right in the world to take the hide off a careless boy, he swallowed all of it, got up before the sun, and gave me a whole day of his hands next to mine, and let me keep my pride. That was him telling me he loved me. That was him saying, "You're still my son, and we'll fix it together, and I ain't going anywhere." He just never had the words, so he used a wrench instead. He never said it out loud. And once I learned to read that, once I finally learned the man's language, I could hear him hollering it all over the rest of my life. See, that generation, they didn't say love. They did it. It was a whole language, and near nobody teaches you how to read it anymore. A full gas tank in your car the morning you drove off to something hard. That was a sentence. Your boots set by the door, oiled so they'd last another season. That was a sentence. The man who never missed a day of work in 40 years, who fixed the thing before you even knew it was broke, who showed up, always showed up, funerals and ball games and 3 in the morning when your car quit on the highway, and never made a speech about a bit of it. That man wasn't cold, friend. That man was talking the entire time. You just grew up in a house where love come in through your hands and your full belly and a roof that didn't leak, instead of in through your ears. He never said it out loud, but Lord, he said it. Now, I want to be fair here, because it does cut both ways. I've known men who could say, "I love you," slick as you please, easy, all day long, and were never once there when it counted for anything. Words are cheap when cheap is all they are. So I ain't standing up here telling you talk is everything. I'd take my quiet daddy over a smooth talker who don't show up 10 times out of 10. But here's where this turns. And I'll tell you straight, this next part is aimed at me first. It took me a while to be willing to say it out loud, even to you. So just stay with me on it a minute. 'Cause if it's true of me, it's liable to be true of you. A few years back, my oldest boy hit a rough stretch. Lost his footing. Work went sideways. Money got tight. The kind of season where a grown man starts to wonder what he's even worth. And he come out here to the place, and I could see it all over him. He didn't need a loan, and he didn't need advice. He needed his daddy to look at him and tell him he was gonna be all right. He needed to hear it. And you know what I did? His truck was running rough out in the drive. So I said, "We'll pull her around. Let's have a look." And I spent the whole afternoon rebuilding that boy's carburetor. Did a fine job of it, too. Sent him home with a truck that ran like new, and not one single word of the thing he'd actually drove all the way out here to get. I handed my son a carburetor instead of a sentence. Same exact thing my daddy handed me an engine. And here's the part that keeps me up at night. As he was getting in that truck to leave, he stopped, and he sort of half looked back at me, and he said, and he tried to make it sound like it was nothing, he said, "Did I do all right, Dad, growing up? Did I do all right by you?" And I had the whole thing right there. It was right there in my mouth, and I nodded at the truck. I said, "Runs good now. Go easy on that clutch." And he said, "Okay," and he drove off. And I stood there and watched him go, and I knew I'd just done it to him. The exact same thing. I'd handed my boy that silence like it was the ranch, like it was something I was supposed to pass down. And I'll own this one, 'cause it's mine to own. My daddy, he had the excuse of his times. Nobody ever gave that man the words, so he couldn't hardly spend what he never had. But me? I knew better. I'd already figured out what that day in the shop really was. I knew, and I did it anyway. 'Cause it is a whole lot easier to turn a wrench than it is to turn to your own grown son and say a hard, soft thing right to his face. He never said it out loud. And neither, when it counted most, did I. So now let me turn this around on you, gentle as I can. You figure they know. That's the whole trap right there in 3 words. You figure your kids know you're proud of them. You figure your wife knows how you feel after all these years. Shoot, you married her, didn't you? You're still sitting at the same table. Ain't that proof enough? You figure your old friend knows what he's meant to you. and maybe they do. Maybe they know it the exact way I knew my daddy loved me, which is to say, they are guessing. They have been reading the tea leaves of you for 30 years, adding up the full gas tanks and the showing up, building themselves a case. And they would give near anything, to set that guessing down for 1 second and just hear it, plain out loud, from your own actual mouth. The "I'm proud of you" your son's been waiting on since he was 9 years old. The "I forgive you" your daughter quit expecting a long time ago. The "you did good and I saw it" for the one who's done for you, quiet, for decades. It is all just sitting there inside you, and it cost you nothing but the risk of feeling a little foolish for about 4 seconds. Now hold on, 'cause I don't want you running off into the ditch on either side of this road. Ditch 1. Don't you go home from this and decide your daddy was a cold man. Don't do that. Don't take what I've said and use it to go bitter on a fella who was hollering his love at you through every fence he mended and every morning he got up in the dark for you. He was speaking. He did the level best with the tongue he was handed. You go on and honor that. Learn to read it and be grateful for it, even now, even if he's long in the ground. But ditch 2, and this is the one I fell in, don't you go and hide in that. Don't you say, "Well, that's just how I show it. My people ain't the talking kind," and use your daddy's silence as your own permission to keep your mouth shut clean till they're lowering you down. It ain't one or the other. Do the acts and say the words. Fix the truck and tell the boy he did all right. Both. Your people are owed the both of it. My daddy never said it out loud. 40 years I waited on words that were never once coming, and I have made my peace with that now, 'cause I finally learned to read the man. I can stand out on this land he built and hear him tell me he loved me in every rock he ever cleared off of it. That part's mine now. That part's all right. But you have still got a voice, and you have still got people on this side of the ground who can still hear it. So don't you make 'em learn to read you. Don't make your children stand in your closet someday going through your things, trying to decode a father who never once spoke, finding the proof of you too late, crying over a full gas tank 40 years on, wishing to God they'd just heard it plain one time. He never said it out loud, so you say it out loud. That's the whole thing. That's the only lesson I've got for you this morning. Whatever the words are that somebody has been waiting their entire life to hear come out of you, say 'em out loud with your mouth this week, while the ears that need 'em are still on this earth to hear it. All right, let me let you off the hook here a minute. I'll tell you what I did, so you know I ain't just up here preaching at you from a clean porch. Last night, before I ever sat down to talk to you this morning, I called my boy, and I said the thing. Told him plain I was proud of him, and that he'd done right by me, and that I should have said so years ago out in that driveway, and I was sorry I didn't. And I'll be honest with you, I felt like an old fool for about 4 seconds. My voice did a thing on me. And then he got real quiet on the line, and then he said, "Thanks, Dad," real soft. And it was the best 4 seconds of foolishness I have spent in a good many years. Best thing I did all week. Might be the best thing I've done all year. It don't get any easier at 60-some, understand. You just finally get to where you'd rather feel a little foolish than leave it unsaid. So do me one kindness down in the comments. Tell me about your mama or your daddy, One plain thing they did, some quiet thing that you only figured out years and years later, was them saying, "I love you." The full tank, the fixed thing, the showing up when it was hard. Name it for me. 'Cause somebody's going to scroll by tonight who's still holding something against a quiet parent. And reading yours might be the thing that helps them learn to read their own. And then, go on and call somebody. You know the one. You thought of them before I even finished the sentence. You take care of yourself now. And go on. Say it out loud. I'll see you next time.